For more analysis on the war in Israel, we're joined by Shibli Telhami. He's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution's Center for Middle East Policy and the Anwar Sadat Professor for Peace and Development at the University of Maryland. Shibli, thanks so much for joining us. And we begin with the wish and hope that your loved ones and family in the Middle East are safe and well after yesterday.
Thank you.
You and I have talked a lot in the past few years about how the Palestinian-Israeli conflict was a tinderbox, but this seemed to come out of nowhere. Why now? Why did Hamas act now?
That's a really good question. The surprise, honestly, is not why they acted now. The surprise is that they had such a capability to do what they did. Frankly, that is the big surprise, and that's the shocker. And the Israeli military inability to stop them, that's the shocker. Now, the timing, when you look at it, there are a number of things that are going on at the same time. The first is that there is a lot of despair in the West Bank, particularly, but also in Gaza, because nothing has changed. 56 years of occupation. They exploit that to their benefit politically. Palestinians feel there's no one paying attention to them. The international community is ignoring them. There might be peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia that ignores them further. So they exploit that. They get attention and credit, as well as marginalize their opponent, the Palestinian Authority. So they have, the timing really is not particularly surprising. There's also been talk of possibly Israel, many of the far-right ministers in Israel have been calling for a large attack on Gaza. In fact, Hamas itself claimed that they had information the Israelis were going to do it anyway after the holidays. Whether they're using that as an excuse or not is hard to know. But nonetheless, there was some expectation of that.
You say the capability was surprising. Do you think they got help from their backers in Iran?
Well, obviously, Iran supports them. And Iran is clearly a menace to America's interests and have supported Hamas. But I sincerely doubt that this is being done for Iran. In fact, the U.S. has already said there's no intelligence that says that. And it's improbable. The relationship between Hamas and Iran is very close and cooperative, but it's not like Hezbollah in Iran, where Hezbollah can get instructions from Iran. I'm not even sure this is a perfect time for Iran, honestly, because they want to perhaps use their allies in case they go to war with Israel and the U.S. Down the road. And I think Hezbollah isn't eager, for example, to enter into this fight right now, although they might be drawn into it nonetheless.
You mentioned the talks about normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. What does this do to that?
Well, it reshuffles the deck. There's no question that the Arab governments have had their own strategic interest and that have not been necessarily in harmony with the interests of the Palestinians. That has been taken place. And the Saudis obviously have their own strategic interest that they were intent on moving forward. But what they didn't expect is that this issue would rise to the top of the agenda in the Middle East, reshuffling of the deck in ways that were unanticipated. And their public, even if the governments don't care about Palestinian issue, our public cares, and the Saudi public particularly cares a lot about the Palestinian issue. And this obviously puts it right center stage. So it limits the possibilities and freedom that governments have with regard to making a deal with Israel, especially knowing now that as Israel has declared war, we're likely to be at this for, unfortunately, many, many, many weeks.
Why do you think Israel missed this? The intelligence didn't pick up the planning. They seemed unprepared. Hamas seemed to get their men into Israel very easily. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think this is something that everybody's going to be asking. And frankly, I think part of the finger pointing, Iran or something like that in this particular case is intended to, divert attention from the failure. I mean, there's been an incredible failure that had taken place, and it's hard to understand. I mean, I've been watching Israeli television very closely the last 2 days, and I think this is not a question they want to get into now because they have business to do. It's fully understandable. There's a lot of innocent civilians that have been hurt. They have a major, challenge that the likes of which they haven't seen in years. So they need to deal with this now, and they're putting off the question of trying to investigate what went wrong. But I think there is, I've investigated the 73 war. This is, as you know, this happened the day after the 50th anniversary of the 73 Arab-Israeli war, where, in fact, Israel was shocked by the Egyptian and the Syrian attacks to try to liberate their territories. And that attack happened in part because Israel felt secure. These countries had been thoroughly defeated by Israel just 6 years before, and Israel was seen to be strong and in command. And yet, obviously, it happened. In this particular case, this confidence the Israelis have, perhaps not taken seriously the capabilities of their opponents, may have played a role in this.
Shibli Telhami, thank you very much.
My pleasure.